Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. To be sure you know you're in the right place. Today's webinar is building a solid foundation for purposeful living in memory care, the three-legged stool, with Jeff McSpadden and Tara Johnson. I am Joan Devine. I am one of the staff of Center for Innovation and very pleased to be the conference program coordinator for the 2025 CFI conference, and thrilled that we are able to offer this pre-conference webinar series to everyone. And that's about all I'm going to say right now because I know you would much rather hear what Jeff and Tara have to say. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Jeff.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And just a quick thank you to CFI and to Janet and Joan for having us today. Really appreciate everybody dialing in for this talk today. I will go ahead and share my screen, making sure, hang on one second, everybody. I want to make sure I'm sharing all the necessary parts of this. Okay. So as Joan introduced, this session today is really about taking what Tara has coined the three-legged stool approach to creating an environment and daily life of purposeful living for those living with dementia and memory care. By quick just rundown of what we're going to cover today, one of the things is really just helping you understand how some of these proven, more holistic approaches to dementia care and memory care and those benefits, how these tie together. And really, it's very true to that three-legged stool kind of concept. Without one of these, it doesn't stand up very well. And we have some of the data around that to prove it. We're going to talk about some of the insights and share some case study findings that show this in its actual application. And then one of the things we really wanted to be sure and bake into this presentation were action steps, things that we can recommend for everybody to try for each one of these three legs. It's one thing to share a lot of interesting information and data. It's another thing to be able to help empower everyone in attendance here to really be able to take something away and use in your own environments and work. So I'll quickly introduce the both of us, if that's all right with you, Tara. With me today is Tara Johnson. She's administrator at Grace Garden, which is the dedicated memory care building at LifeSpring Community out of Central Georgia. My name is Jeff McSpadden. I'm one of the founders and I'm the CEO at Composure. Composure is a technology-driven but person-centered care rooted company using audio as an intervention to improve overall quality of life, really leaning on this concept that the power of sound can promote human thriving. So here I'd love to just turn it over to Tara to give you an overview of Grace Garden and LifeSpring Community.
Thank y'all for having us. Just to kind of introduce to you Grace Garden, we are a 22-bed personal care home memory care. We sit on a campus that also has a skilled nursing building where they are certified for 75 beds. Part of those beds are short-term rehab and the other is true skilled nursing long-term care. We opened in October of 2023. Out of those 22 beds, only 4 of those beds are semi-private. So only 2 of the rooms are semi-private and everything else is private. And kind of did that. That was very intentional. Everything we have done in our building is very intentional. But the reason that if you've worked with memory care very much, it's really hard to put people together because we're not used to living with strangers. But for the four that are in our semi-privates, it has actually been a wonderful thing. This July, as a campus, we are celebrating 86 years. It's been 86 years since Christ Sanctified Holy Church decided that one of the things that they were called to do was to take care of the elders. And so we've grown from a small house in a pecan orchard to what you see here in this picture, and are super excited to continue to grow and to learn and to provide services for the people that live in our community. So the three-legged stool, as Jeff said, we did kind of coin that phrase because we felt like when we built Grace Garden, there were some very specific holistic approaches that we wanted to take that we felt like made a huge difference, but it was going to take all three of them. So, Jeff, the first one, yep, dining. And you'll see as we go through the slides, I'll go into these different ones. So the first one's dining. The second leg is engagement. We do not just do busy work around here. Everything we do has some meaning and some purpose behind it. And so then the sleep portion, and Jeff will really dive into that, but it takes all three of those to do what we believe is for someone to live their very best life with a diagnosis that a lot of people think is helpless or hopeless. And we don't feel that way about that diagnosis. So we take all three of these and put them together and live our best lives around here.
So with that, usually the presentations I typically see are all kind of structured in a similar fashion where you start talking about all the different pieces and you kind of go in depth on each piece. And then you finally use your sort of proof points at the very end as the big reveal. We actually wanted to flip that upside down a little bit and share with you just up front how, the data that we've been able to see and the results we've been able to see are a direct result of these three legs standing so firm, as a unified approach. So one of the things that we looked at as we were gathering data was medication use. And it's probably helpful before we kind of show some of these graphs just to describe a little bit what was what the protocol, what the method was for this information. So we took a pre and post approach. So 4 months in each period to look at different measures and metrics. So medication use being one, falls being another, occupancy rate, and so on. And this information was gathered through kind of a combination of means. So we had staff reports, we had the EHR and MDS data. We had all kinds of verifiable, objective and subjective kind of data gathering measures. So let's go into the medication use bit and kind of break that down to what the findings were. So again, this is a pre-post analysis breaking psychotropic drugs down in their various three main categories. So we have antipsychotics, anti-anxiety, and hypnotic medication use. And just to orient yourself a little bit to what you're seeing here, the dots on the screen represent the median for the amount of medication used in each category. Gray represents the Grace Garden pre-period. Green is Grace Garden post. Blue is comparing Grace Garden to long-term care on the same campus at LifeSpring. So blue is pre and orange is post on the long-term care side. So it's kind of a two-dimensional, multi-dimensional look at it. We have pre and post and then also comparative to campus, part of the campus. So with that, what we're really sort of surmising here from what you see is that from pre to post, we were able to show that antipsychotic use declined quite a bit. So we were able to reduce that. in Grace Garden, above and beyond sort of the reduction that was happening in long-term care. With the anti-anxiety use, it went from quite a bit of variability in use month to month to more stabilized, even with a slight increase in the amount of anti-anxieties used, was actually became very predictable and stabilized, compared to a relatively, comparable and fairly wide variability in long-term care. And then with hypnotic use, Tara, I don't want to speak for you, but and you can clarify all of this when I'm done here. But the main goal, I believe, that you had was to never introduce hypnotics, if at all possible, for your residents. So from the day the doors opened through our kind of analysis period, you were able to maintain zero hypnotic use in your long-term care. Oh, excuse me, in Grace Garden. And then comparatively, I know it's kind of hidden back here, but there was still a fairly regular use of hypnotics in long-term care by comparison. So I just want to give that quick overview and let Tara kind of fill in with more color on what we're seeing here.
Yeah, so if I could add a fourth leg, and if I'd have thought about this before we said a three-legged stool, if I could add a fourth leg that I would say is equally as important as the other three, it would be advocacy. So we opened Grace Garden knowing that I was not going to be a huge proponent of let's just medicate everybody. That's just not who I am. And so our physician, our nurse practitioner, and our hospice company that we work with know and understand that we don't just change meds on people without sitting down and talking through it. And so that also comes to play in all of this, especially in the hypnotics and the anti-psychs, because I do not enjoy walking into a place, and I used to work for Alzheimer's Association, so I've been in a lot of facilities. But when I would go in, it would unnerve me to see people who should be up and moving and talking and being productive, and they look like zombies, because that is not us living our best life. So let me just say advocacy plays a huge role in all of this as well. And when Jeff and I first started looking at the numbers and trying to do some comparisons and stuff, I will tell you, we did have a period, a month, where we saw an increase in the antipsychotics. And so did a little digging a little deeper, and it was due to one new admit who we got off of a lot of medications. And then we had several people go on hospice, and that was before we had our discussion with hospice of, I don't want these meds just sitting out there. When we need them, I'll let you know. Because being in a personal care home, we are not typically near where we're going to need certain medications that you necessarily need at end of life. And so we weren't using them, so we didn't want them sitting on our EMRs, and just really, really excited to see the changes. And so I say that to say, develop relationships with the people that you work with, the people who come from the outside, and stand firm and stand, supportive of those people that you're caring for, because you yourself can make a big difference when it comes to all of this. We had one guy that actually lived in a different memory care. His family called me to come and see him. We're just getting ready to open our doors, and went over to see him and said, there's no way he can't come to my building. He's not mobile. He couldn't hold his head up. He couldn't feed himself. And so came back, talked to the team in the skilled building and said, what can we do? He needs some help, and brought him into the skilled building, reduced his medications. He lives with me in Grace Garden now. He walks everywhere he wants to walk. He eats his food and everybody else's. and that's under his own doings, and just has a family that's very grateful for a team that said this is the approach we're going to take. This is how we're going to do this. So it's stories like that just prove that, the graphs are great, and I love seeing the numbers because I'm kind of a number girl. But when you see it firsthand in the residents and you hear it from the families, it really shows that what we're doing is the right thing.
Awesome. The next thing we looked at was fall rates and fall incident counts. Again, from a pre-post 4 month at a time, analysis perspective, but also comparing Grace Garden's resident performance to a similar cohort of residents in their long-term care on the same campus. What you're basically seeing here is in the pre-period, about half of the months that we measured, Grace Garden had actually more falls than in long-term care. But in that post-analysis, once all of these things that we're about to dive into in greater detail took root, then the whole thing flipped over. So, all 4 months comparatively were fewer falls. And you can really see it just sort of in this trend line, the blue representing the long-term care trend, and then green over time was very stable, if not just a slight decline in fall rates over time at Grace Garden. So, yeah, and again, Tara, if you want to bring any more light to this stat.
Yeah, so when we looked at the 4 month window, we actually showed, and it's kind of hard to see with the line, but we showed a pretty significant decrease based on the fact that we only have 22 people here. And then if you kind of dove even deeper, it was like, well, we have 2 repeat offenders. And we had 1 month where 3 people fell, all broke their shoulder. And 2 of them were actually with family members. And so it was just kind of a like, oh, that messed things up there, but not really. But again, it wasn't that we looked at it and said, oh, those are the people that aren't sleeping well, or those are the people who are on all these medications. They were just freak accidents that happened. So very, very proud of this slide.
For sure. And, one of the things that's sort of a through line between the medication use numbers and the fall rates is stability. That over time, as we sort of looked at the data, it became increasingly more predictable and stable over time, which is a big part of the game. It's so hard to anticipate all the one-offs and the random things, but if you're generally over your population are achieving a lot of stability, that's a really good thing for operations, for staff, or for the residents themselves and the families. And one of the big ways that gets reflected is again in occupancy rates, and which Grace Garden can really boast a 96% very stable occupancy rate, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I'll tell you, when we market Grace Garden, when people come to see us, we talk about these 3 important areas. We talk about what we have in place for them. And I think it makes a difference when people are comparing us to other facilities in our area. We are very consistent with our message, but we are also very open book. Like you don't have to have an appointment. Come in and see what we're doing. And word of mouth has been incredible from our families that live here, because they see that we're not just saying we're doing these things, but we are doing these things. And so 96%, we are very proud of that. We stay full most of the time. We do send some of our residents when they reach a point of not being able to self-propel, or we see them taking a pretty major decline. We are able to send them over to our skilled nursing building. But we've also had people who came in for short-term rehab who have ended up living at Grace Garden because it wasn't safe to discharge them home. And we had some vacancies. So it's been pretty cool to see how the two buildings have been able to work together. We really, in our minds, I think, thought, well, it'll just be Grace Garden feeding into long-term care, but it has not been that way. And so that's been a really good thing. And out of my first three admits, they are all still here with me, and they came in October of 2023. I take that back. One of them just moved to skilled. But she's still here on campus, but the other two are still with me. And I think that's a testimony to bringing people in and just helping them to stay as functioning as possible, especially if you don't have a whole lot of other health issues going on, and dementia is the main thing you're dealing with. So
And
we're very blessed.
yeah, because that's huge. I mean, I've recently heard some other providers talking about their average stay length of 12, 16 months, 12 to 18 months, something like that. So you definitely got an edge on most of the folks out there. So with that, like we said, we just wanted to kind of load up front some of the stats and the proof that we've been able to gather on this approach. So let's now just take a turn and start diving into each leg and share with you a little bit of what Tara and her team have put together at Grace Garden to really address these three things with a lot of depth.
Yeah, so we will start with dining. If you want to go to the next slide. So it's much more than the food we serve. The environment. We have our kitchen, you can kind of see in this picture, our kitchen where the food is prepared is right there where that open bar is. All of their meals are cooked here. And so our goal was a good night's sleep, wake up to the smell of bacon or eggs or whatever, French toast, whatever it is we're having that morning. And because that's what we wake up to at home, or as we were growing up, hopefully that's what we woke up to at home. Another thing that was important to me was that we do family style tables. I kind of got some side eyes when I said that, and because if you work in long-term care world, we want to sit two people or four people together, something like that. But that was not what I wanted, because I wanted Grace Garden to be a family. And I will tell you, my family style tables fill up. And then we have a couple of round tables. And so that's been very, very fun to watch. The open concept kitchen, it just makes a difference, because they can see it, they can smell it, they can ask for anything they want. The kitchen has people working from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then staff can, of course, go back and get other things as needed. Another piece on the environment is we don't have the TV playing. And if you could see a bigger picture, you would see that it opens to our living room. The TV is not playing unless it's the fireplace that's playing, or unless it's some soft music that's playing. It's not the news or anything like that we may sit down and watch at home while we're eating. And so it's just a calming environment. I will not tell you it doesn't get loud, because typically they're eating and talking. And so there's a lot going on in there. But hydration is another key piece. So one of the things that learned from a friend of mine in Pennsylvania is these things called jelly drops, and jelly drops are wonderful hydration. And so we really try to push that, because it's hard to get people who have dementia to drink like we want them to drink. But give them something that tastes like it might be sweet food, then that's a whole nother ballgame. So we use jelly drops, but we also offer fluids throughout the day. We have two specific times where we offer drinks and snacks. That's in the morning and in the afternoon. And then, of course, at night, they're offered hydration. And just keeping healthy routines. So we have a window for breakfast. It is from 7 to 9, because we don't all want to get up at 7. And That has been a learning curve for staff, especially if they came from another facility or came from long term where they think everybody's supposed to be up at 7 a.m. Well, that's not how we function around here. So we have breakfast 7 to 9, and it's a hot meal. And then anybody that gets up after 9, if they want cereal or a cereal bar or toast or anything like that, they can have it. And then we have a set time of 12 for lunch and a set time of 5 o'clock for our dinner. And everybody's just used to it. We have some residents, we have to go get them, but we have other residents that they know there's something still within them, and then the smells and the sounds that they know it's mealtime, and they're coming, and we stay very consistent with those routines because that's incredibly important. So one of the things that I would say to you is think about your schedule. Think about the meal time. Is it best to always serve breakfast at 7? Because what happens to your residents that don't want to get up till 9? Think about the noise level and other distractions. Again, you can see in this picture, the oldies, I think, is what was playing. And so just some soft music in the background is a good thing. And then making sure that we're encouraging the hydration, because that is a big key, because we all know how older people get UTIs. So hydration, hydration, hydration. All right, so then I'm going to go to the next stool, which is engagement. We, again, are very intentional when it comes to engagement. And so activities and socializing with others is, it's so vital. It's so vital. As a single mom whose child has gone off to college, I get my socialization here, and I get a lot of it, and at church, and we're just meant to be around other people. And so one of the things that we did was we use a program that is based off of I'm Still Here, that Dr. Zeisel and a team of scientists and researchers got behind, and just really put it into play. And in a nutshell, what Dr. Zeisel says is, just because you have Alzheimer's or another type of dementia, it doesn't mean that you can't have purpose. And you can have purpose, and everybody else around you needs to learn to live in that present moment with you. And so we use that engagement, that theory to help with our engagement. So here's what we call our philosophy of care. It's person first. And it's not about what I can or can't do. It's about what do I want to do, and what can you give me that has purpose. I think it's up to all of us to be the culture change. And I think that this is the first step of that is seeing the person for who they are, getting to know them. We use a little packet that's called Help Me Have a Good Day, that I created, and our families fill it out, and it has lots of things that only that family knows about that person, and it helps us to put that person first. I feel like I can control care and I can control environment. And if I control those two things well, then more times than not, there's not a need for me to add medications. And so I think, look around and see what you can change. What needs to change about the environment or the way that we're giving care. Having living spaces that empower the resident, I think, are also critical. This is their home, and I get to come here every day. So there is nothing in this building that they can't take and walk away with. I may have to come back and rearrange in the morning. I have a few people that like to help me decorate. I don't want them to shop in my office, so I do close my door if I'm not in here typically, but they have living spaces that they know are theirs. And I think we have a picture maybe of that in a little bit. Connecting through creativity is very important. So some of the clubs that we do is Monday we do culinary club. So anybody that likes to cook, that is their club. We do Bible study on Wednesday afternoon. We have a crafts club. We have a travel club. We try to have different things that people can choose from, that they can connect to, and then they can be creative with that. And you'll be surprised what you can learn about somebody through some of these clubs that we have. And then building relationships. How well do you know your resident? That is what it all goes back to, is how well do you know your resident? Because if you know your resident, then you can build relationships with them, because you can't talk to somebody that you don't know anything about. Or at least you can't talk to them and have an intimate conversation. And that is where they build their trust for you. And so building relationships is, it's hard to say that any of these is any more important than the other, because I think it takes all of them. I think it takes all of them. So here we are doing, this is our courtyard. And this is us doing what we call music and movement. So we are exercising, our little speakers back there in the background, but we're also using instruments to do that. And we even have some residents that were leading it. We like to involve our families as much as they want to be involved. So in the picture that's on my left of them painting, that is actually a couple of residents, and then a daughter and a son-in-law and a husband are all in that. And so we love for them to join in. One of the things that I tell them from day one is, if you come in and we're doing activity or engagement of any type, you need to join in. Please do not come and get the resident and take them away. Come in and find a seat. And so we do that with our families. The picture on the right, you'll see they all look like they're reading something. Those are articles that they read. Sometimes it's about whatever the national day, let's say it's Hershey Day. And so we may be learning about Hershey, the company, or we may be learning about chocolate chip cookies or something, relatable. And so we try to learn new things, and those new things lead to a lot of discussions. And those discussions often lead to us talking about some really good memories from our past. So what I would say is, know your residents. We probably should have put that in all bold letters. I mean, all capital letters. Know your residents. Be consistent. Our people know that we are doing things consistently throughout the day. They know at 10 a.m. we are starting with coming together on the porch and doing our morning meeting. They may not tell you it's called morning meeting, but they know that we are doing certain things. They know at, 4 o'clock in the afternoon or somewhere near there, because they know it's almost supper time, that we're going to do something where we're either shooting basketball or the walking club is walking or that kind of thing. So consistency is the key to that, because they learn that routine. And then engagement to staff pairing. Know what your staff's good at and what they enjoy. Just because somebody enjoys arts and crafts doesn't mean they enjoy the cooking piece. And so putting the right staff person in charge of those clubs is also really important.
I just want to jump in here with a couple of off the cuff comments about what was just shared. I think the thing that really stands out for me about this engagement piece and the dining is this is getting sort of to the core of that person directed approach. So much of us, so many have been really focusing on person centeredness, which is still great in the right direction, but person directed means your engagement philosophy is really centered around getting to know that person, also getting to know your staff, and having that pairing be something that's a force multiplier. It actually really helps encourage purposeful living, but really basing it on each individual. And the other thing I really love about the approach at Grace Garden with this engagement is that you talk about clubs. because the club provides that consistency, and your residents can join whatever club that they're interested in. So instead of saying, I'm creating this calendar of activities and every Monday we're going to paint and every blah, 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 it's more in the structure of a club, which feels like belonging and joining and socialization. It has so much more richness and depth to it. So I just wanted to, share a little bit of what I'm hearing from how this is described. And I've heard you describe this a bunch of times. So I bring I learn new things every time.
Yeah, very person directed here. Person centered is great. It's person centered comes a long ways from you have to do this because this is just how we've always done it. But person directed just takes it to a whole nother level and makes a difference.
Absolutely. So as Tara mentioned, I'm sort of the sleep guy. And I'll jump in here. And one thing I'll say is that sleep is one of these big critical gaps I'm seeing across the industry. I think most folks dialed in here can recognize that their residents, the people they care for, are probably experiencing difficulty sleeping either consistently, chronically, or comes in waves and so forth. And the more I have involved myself in learning about these issues, the deeper this rabbit hole goes. And what I mean by that is that, providing good sleep for residents on a consistent basis is one of the single most powerful things you can do to improve the daily life for someone living with dementia. But there's a couple of real sort of grounding bits of science and evidence here that I want to kick this section off with, just so that we have kind of a mutual collective understanding of what we're really talking about here. So in recent years, there's been new science that has really connected what I'm calling the dementia sleep connection. So on one side, you have sleep loss that will actually lead to a higher risk of getting dementia. So even for folks in their 50s and 60s, if you experience chronic sleep issues in those years, you actually have a much higher likelihood of developing dementia later on. So there's that connection between sleep and dementia on the sort of upstream side. But then dementia itself also decreases that restorative sleep ability, because the very sort of system level, biological systems that promote good sleep are the very ones that are attacked by the disease of dementia. And that is pretty much across the board, all forms of dementia. And so what that looks like, sort of as indicated in these little call outs here, is, the cycle is very hard to pin where it starts, but essentially sleep loss can actually prevent the body's natural ability to remove plaque buildup, so beta amyloid plaques, which are so prominent in dementia diagnoses and part of that disease. Sleep has this ability to wash that away when we have deep sleep and REM stage sleep. And those are the two stages most often impaired and almost completely missing from people living with dementia in their sleep. So without that deep sleep, you're actually contributing to the progression of the disease. And so it's a very primary sort of it's an interesting new connection that science is making between these two things here. There's a third part of this that I'm going to dive into in just a second, but I just wanted to sort of make it very clear why it is that we're really focusing so much attention on sleep these days. It's because of how closely tied it is to dementia. And so really what it comes down to is a big fundamental question, which is, in dementia care, how do we create real opportunity for restorative sleep when a person's ability due to the disease is compromised, and their need for that deep sleep and that restorative sleep is so critical and so high. This is really the fundamental question that drives all the work that I do in the industry. And I've explored different territories. It might be kind of helpful at this point to give you just a quick background on myself. I'm a bit of a black sheep of most rooms I enter these days. But before I started this company, I was actually a musician and composer working in film and TV for decades. So I have sort of trained myself to live through my ears. And so sound and the environment around us and how that plays a part here is something that I'm going to dive into next. But just to, again, I want everybody to kind of walk away with this fundamental question in mind. How do we create this opportunity for better sleep where it's so critically needed? And so just to also kind of give a mutual understanding around what we're talking about with sleep is, now we've sort of, science has connected sleep with dementia, and how folks with dementia are typically missing out on a lot of that restorative qualities of sleep. And it's highly fragmented. It's a lot of wakefulness. It's a lot of up and walking around potentially. And a lot of this is just rooted across all humanity, all people, in circadian rhythms. So as we talk about circadian rhythms, the sort of basic way to think about this is that there are, for each one of us as individuals, again, going back to what Tara was describing with the dining, being able to accommodate people's different schedules and so forth, is, we all have different sleep, bedtimes and wake times. The cycle at which we conduct our activities through the day, when we eat, when we go outside, when we get some exercise, when we do things, really follows a pretty predictable pattern for most of us. But with people living with dementia, circadian rhythms are thrown out the window practically in most cases. It's very hard from a very biological standpoint for them to regulate their circadian rhythms naturally. So being able to provide some regularity, some predictability is very helpful in getting that circadian functioning happening on a daily basis. So having regular bedtimes and wake times that fit their needs, obviously, and fit their schedules. But having that be regular day to day is very critical. Exposure to natural light, to be very specific about that, natural light within the first hour or two of waking in the day is really critical to really set that internal clock for the day. And then, eating, drinking, physical activity, social, all those engagement opportunities that Tara has for her residents, those, when they're functioning sort of on a regular basis and a regular schedule, helps keep the circadian rhythm in check. And then environment, that's a word that has come up a number of times already. Environment plays a huge part in regulating circadian rhythms, especially for folks that who, again, naturally have a system that is more or less broken when it comes to circadian rhythms. So with that thought on environment, I just want to highlight, it's going to be a little bit hard to monitor the chat, but does anybody want to venture a guess in the chat as to what this thing I'm circling and pointing out is? Anybody have a quick guess they could throw into the chat? Okay. White noise. That's a very interesting. Okay. All right. I might have given it away a little bit with the bit about my background, but yeah, this is so both of those clues of white noise and sound machine are on the right path. Tracking movement is another sort of protocol, but we won't be getting into that today. But yeah, so sound is the right zone here. This is actually a speaker that is networked across the campus there, but we'll get into some of the details here in a minute. So what typically happens, particularly within congregate care settings, is you've got a population of folks that a very high percentage of them are struggling with sleep on a chronic and nightly level. And what has been found to be true across multiple studies is that noise is actually the #1 cause of this sleep disruption. This is very true in the home environment as well, but there's particular challenges around the built environment for congregate care that makes this a particular issue. So since we're going to be talking about sleep and sound and dementia and so forth, I want to just kind of define what we mean by noise. So I'll share this quick little sample with all of you, and we'll get into the weeds more on this. That's pretty intense little sample there, and it's made to illustrate a point, which are each one of those sounds that you heard are fairly typical. You've got beeps and alarms, you've got phones, you've got carts, wheels going down the hall, you've got conversation, you've got doors opening and closing, you've got all of the things that are just natural sound sources in a busy care environment. And that is by no fault of any one particular person. It's just that care environments in general were never built to accommodate sleep. You know, the predominant recommendation, if you go look up how do I improve my sleep on the internet, you're going to see the same advice everywhere. Sleep in a cool, dark, and quiet place. And not all of those are possible, especially in congregate care. And noise is the biggest one. And why noise? Why not something else? Why is it noise that always reaches the #1 on a list of common disruptions? It's because we as humans have actually evolved over time to process sound for our own survival. So these core oldest structures of the brain, very close to the brain stem, the lower parts of the stem, are where the earliest decisions and processing of sound happen. So and a lot of that is wired very closely to our autonomic nervous system. So, you know, these things control whether we have a stress reaction to something we hear or a calming reaction to something we hear. So it explains why if you hear a sudden door slam or something, you know, a truck horn blaring at you that you didn't expect, we flinch, we have a nervous reaction. We didn't have to think about that. That is an instinctual, hardwired part of us. And the flip side is also true. If you hear something that you consider soothing, like ocean waves or, you know, the sound of a kitten purring or something like that, that actually not only helps lower our blood pressure, helps our system relax, but it actually aids in digestion and gut activity. So there's these really powerful parts of the autonomic nervous systems that are driven by what we hear. And then consider this within the sort of context of a dementia diagnosis and pathology. Folks living with dementia typically have more sensory sensitivities. So if you think about touch and sight and smell and, you know, where you can use things like smell, you know, as Tara was talking about dining, that smell of, you know, eggs cooking or bacon frying in the morning, those are pleasant stimulus, right? That could be, you know, appetizing. But there's plenty of things that we might encounter on a daily basis that kind of throw you into a different state of mind. And, you know, it's funny, I was reading a bit yesterday on this concept of lowered coping thresholds or coping abilities. I think it's really not fair ultimately to say that someone with dementia has lowered coping skills. I think it's actually that a person's capacity to process different stimuli coming in all at once is overloading. You get easily overloaded. And then any of us who can't deal, we've all been bombarded by stimuli in one way or another and have a hard time dealing with that. But that is a sort of a base level of operating that someone with dementia has. And where I'm going with this is that sound is actually one of the most persistent stimuli that is hardest to tune out. And there's a wonderful guy named Julian Treasure who gives a lot of talks about considering sound in advertising and different aspects of life. But I love his quote that we have no ear lids. We didn't develop to, as humans, to easily shut that out. So, unless you experience severe hearing loss later on, and then all of a sudden, you've got other issues by not hearing the world around you. But this is a really powerful thing to kind of bear in mind as you go about your work and your care for people with dementia. Start to notice what comes through the ears, because we often take this for granted.
Yeah, so I'm going to chime in there, Jeff.
Yeah.
So in central Georgia, where I live, middle Georgia, we don't see snow. It's a very rare occurrence. And so we had what the weather people called a snowmageddon back in, I think maybe January or something. Anyway, I was able to stay here. I actually had an empty room. My aunt had just moved out over to the skill building. And so I said, I had to stay all night. Somebody needed to sleep. So it had already been a very long day. So I told Jeff, I said, I decided it was a great time for me to try this out. And so I went in my computer and fixed it up to come on because it was like almost 2 a.m. and I was just going to lay down for just a little bit. And when you're that person and you're like, what's going to happen? Or we maybe get out of here, or staff going to be able to come. Your mind's going 100 miles an hour. And so I thought this is going to be okay. I'm going to lay down, get a shower, and laid down. And I told Jeff that what I learned is that my mind didn't really stop, but when I did sleep, I slept well. But before I went to sleep, I discovered that we had a really loud door that the employees like to go in and out of on that particular hall that I was sleeping on. And so I thought, golly, I can control myself from being overstimulated and I can control how I react to it. But what if I had been someone with dementia who couldn't control those things? And so it was really neat to be able to have what I talk about all the time is how wonderful the sound blanket is. But it also helped me to pick up on noises that I don't think my staff realized were happening so that we could then do our part to help control that environment.
Absolutely. That lived experience is so important, and I think for time's sake, I'm just going to blast through really quickly some of these last couple of slides here so we can get to some Q&A, because there's a lot of really interesting comments in the chat and so forth. But another thing I want to illustrate, sort of to the point that Tara was just making, is that a recent study was done measuring brain cell activity and exposure to sound, because what we've all known instinctually, but now is scientifically proven, is that our brains, our ears are always listening when we're awake or when we're asleep. And it's that stimulus of sound. And typically what happens at night is it's not the noise activity I was just playing an audio sample of earlier. That's not usually what happens in the environments at night. What usually happens is you'll have moments of relative quiet that are then interrupted with spikes of noise or activity, like someone coming in and out of a door, or keys jangling, or something that is breaking up those moments of quiet. And you can't control those 100%. But what you can do, well, in this study, what they were basically able to prove is that there is very, very little difference in terms of the brain cell activity when exposed to different sounds when awake or when asleep. And so the way they illustrated this was by measuring brain cell activity in response to a very famous piece of Mozart music. So bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. Everybody's heard that piece. they noticed that each note of music actually lines up with a cluster of brain cell activity. I'll back up here so you can see the gray clusters here. Those all represent brain cells firing, and it is sub-millisecond reaction time to the notes being played. And that is consistent with people who are awake to people who are asleep. Which is just proving that point that, again, we can't turn off our brain's listening device. We actually listen to our environment for our own survival, and when we're asleep, we're at our most vulnerable. So we need to take in that stimulus. So what Composure did in our earliest days was we had the opportunity to collaborate on a study with a memory care community in Pennsylvania and the Center for Health Design, which is a translational research organization who actually conducted the study. But we basically were looking at how could you craft and curate sound as a treatment, as sort of what we call the sonic sleep treatment, to measure its impact on sleep. And then we looked through the lens of behavioral outcomes during the day as a proxy for those sleep measures, because we didn't want to put on, EEG machines and, all the sleep lab kind of gear, because that itself would be a disturbance to people's sleep. But we exposed them, the participants in this community, to regular stimulus every night, which was an 8-hour long sequence of sounds, and really were very pleasantly surprised with the outcomes. We actually achieved 2 statistically significant outcomes and a whole host of other things that improved, including all the ADLs, and also just signals that there were cognitive boosts and more, folks were showing an easier time following direction. There was less daytime drowsiness. That was one of the statistical and significant outcomes. And for anyone who's interested in reading this report, I'll share my email address at the end, and you can reach out. I'm happy to share that. So back to this picture, most people actually who wrote in the chat guessed it fairly correctly. This is a networked speaker that is designed to support our system Composure has developed, where we can distribute a set of network speakers, 1 per room, and control them independently. So it's very person-centered. So we can dial in for each person the timing, the volume level, and the sound choice that is most appropriate and supportive for their individual needs, room to room. So it's not a broadcast system. And that was really critical for what we felt was going to be most effective in treating people's sleep. And so we have that system up and running at Grace Garden. It is part of that sleep piece. It's that sleep leg on the stool. And what we're hearing from staff are some pretty encouraging reports. One being that folks are falling asleep faster. There are fewer people waking up during the night. And even among those that are still waking up, there's actually a huge reduction in number of waking events. And then it all translates into a better night's sleep means a better, more engaged and active and alert day. So we're seeing those gains as well. So really quickly, because we're right at time, I'm seeing, the things that we want to leave you with on this sleep piece is really also tied to sound, because that sonic environment piece is so critical to how well someone can sleep. So in your care environment, I'd encourage you to just have somebody that could make a list overnight or even during the day, and do a little audit. What do you hear? What's the loudest? What's the softest? What's the most frequent sounds that you hear? Are there things that can be adjusted in the routines and the duties and the things that, maybe don't vacuum the halls at 4 a.m., and residents' sleep schedules and routines. How can you help people meet their needs for sleep? It's that question I posed earlier. How do we provide the opportunity for deeper sleep when the ability and need are mismatched, right? And then how can you optimize resident rooms individually for those optimal sleep environments? Keeping them cool and dark is one thing. keeping it quiet is quite another. And so white noise machines, sound machines, things that encourage that kind of approach are super effective at masking the environmental noise and de-emphasizing all of those disparate sort of sound levels so that the resting, sleeping brain can be more stabilized and consistent through the night. So with all of that, I'm trying to go really quickly here. We want to encourage people just to be more purposeful, be these architects of people's lives. Think of it like that, take in the whole 24-hour experience, 7 days a week, all year round. This is about applying a lot of thought and strategy. So it can be a very low resource, but very high yield kind of approach, where you're going to see a lot of gains in very critical metrics from just applying more thoughtful approaches across the different 3 legs. And then please take action. This is a great opportunity for you to pause. You take time out of your day, and we so appreciate that, to learn some new concepts. But us talking and sharing ideas is only half of the picture. The other part is doing something about it and really try what works for you. Tara, I toss it to you if you have some final thoughts.
Yeah, no, I would just say person-centered. It's got to be person-centered, but more importantly, it's got to be person-directed. I think both of our contact info will be available, and so don't hesitate to reach out, because it takes all of us working together to make a difference across, something much bigger than just our small community. So.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much. Sorry we went a little over time. I can't speak for Tara, but if anybody has some extra questions, I'm happy to stick around.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let me add Jeff and Tara. I somehow messed up my video, so you don't have to look at me right now, but thank you so very much. This was phenomenal. As Denise Bedard, one of our attendees, said, I hope I said that right. This is so awesome. She put that in the chat. And I have a question for you, Tara, since we're short on time. We have a number of really good questions in the Q&A. If I send those to you, would you write those out, and we will put that in the information then that we share with the attendees after the event?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. That way, anybody who had to sign off early, we don't miss them, and they'll get those. So we'll get those to you this afternoon, and we'll get
Okay.
them out to everyone else tomorrow. And along with that, you will get a link to the video, and you will get a copy of the slides. We had several people ask about that, so that's great to know. I wanted to share a quick comment. There were so many great comments. I hope you all had a chance to kind of look at them on the side while you were reading everything else. But this one kind of ties into what I'm going to share with you right now very quickly. Eileen Bennett, who's a dear friend of CFI and Pioneer Network, wrote, advocacy does not need to be a 4th leg. It can be labeled and incorporated in each of the pillars as a stabilizing support built into the framework. Without it, the stool will collapse. And I saw that quote, and I thought that leads us right into what we want to share with you about upcoming things with the Center for Innovation. So Janet's going to flip a different slide on here real fast. We want to be sure that again, we're so grateful we were able to do this, but we really, really, really would love to see you in St. Louis, August 11th through 14th. The conference is going to be awesome. I can tell you, it's my hometown, and I'm glad to have you all come. We got some great things planned for the conference. We have some pre-conference sessions on Monday, a technology session, one on leadership, one on coalition building. That is what we need to do to get this movement going and moving ahead. We do have a virtual option, not quite the same as being together, but if that's what will work for you, we would love to have you join us virtually. So check out our registration and see what all the different options are. I want you to know the people that are there that are part of this conference, they are people that share the passion that you all share, that want to make a difference. And Jeff absolutely exemplifies the partnership we have with what others would traditionally call a vendor. They're not vendors to us. These are our partners. These are people who share our vision and our belief, and who create the kind of products that Jeff has created at Composure that can help us to take this next generation. So what a great opportunity to meet some phenomenal people in that way as well. And I just want to tell you, we'll finish off our pre-conference webinar. We only have one left, and it is on July 21st. 23rd. I missed it there. There we go. And it is with my good friend, Dr. Paul Filkowski, who is the founder of the National Association of Long-Term Care Volunteers, who is doing some phenomenal work. And we'll share with you how mobilizing a volunteer movement can really make a difference for you. We have staff shortages all over the place, and we have a wonderful resource that how do we capitalize on that? So please join us for that webinar. They're all the webinars can be seen on the conference website. If you look, it's a little funky, but if you look on Monday, you know how we are in this world. We find a way to make things work. If you look on Monday at 2 o'clock, August 11th, you'll find all the webinars. You'll find a link to the recordings when they're completed as well. If you haven't listened to any of the Elevate Elder podcasts, they are awesome. I just listened to one yesterday that the guests were Rosemary Fagan, the founder of Pioneer Network, and Charlene Boyd and Joanne Rader, who have done phenomenal work, who were there in the beginning. And oh my gosh, it's just so inspirational to hear them. And some of those people are going to be with us at the conference as well. So that's all for now. I apologize for running late, and I thank you for hanging in there, but it was well worth it because, oh my gosh, Tara and Jeff, what an awesome presentation. What great information. You are doing phenomenal work, Tara. You need to give all those folks back at your community a huge hug.
I will. I will.
All the great work they are doing. And look at these comments. Oh my gosh. So thank you all very, very much. I look forward to hopefully seeing some of you in St. Louis and somewhere along the line, the rest of you. Have a wonderful day. And I guess that's it.
Thank you, Joan. Thank you so much,
Thank
everybody.
you. Yes.
You're welcome.
Have a great day.
You
Bye-bye.
too.